All right, so I've started recording. I'm going to start the screen share. All right, so you guys should probably see my calendar. Can I get some auditory confirmation or some thumbs up in the chat if you see my screen?
Yes, sir.
All righty. It's tricky when you're presenting because you lose the ability to easily see everything on Zoom, like the chat and the
Have you recorded yesterday's session?
I have recorded it. I haven't uploaded it. I have terrible bandwidth, so it'll take me forever. And I'd actually like to edit out this chatter at the beginning and then the Q&A at the end. But anyway, welcome to today's meeting. Today's topic is about building and testing web apps with JavaScript. And let's see. Here we go. So the idea here, I know some JavaScript. I'm not an expert. If you came to hear words of wisdom from someone who knows what they're talking about, you're in the wrong place. Yesterday, doing test automation with Java, that's been my primary trade for a long time, and I feel pretty confident in that area. Like I said, I have some experience with JavaScript, but some of you may have more experience than me. But one thing I think I'm good at is I'm a good learner. Over the years, I've learned a lot of different tools and technologies, including test automation with JavaScript. And I've done some web development, but this is a learn together, as I call it. I'm going to learn with you. If you have knowledge to share with me, that's great. If I can teach you something, that's good too. I guess good for you. And we'll learn together. The plan is to start by going over some basics, like what is JavaScript, what are we going to learn, and so forth. I guess let's look at the chat really quick. We'll use the Zoom chat just in case everyone's not on the Slack channel. We'll figure this out eventually. But you know, a show of hands, thumbs up, or whatever. Who here has experience doing JavaScript development, or who does not? Give me a thumbs up if you do have experience, or a thumbs down if you don't. And since this is a small group, we can probably feel free to speak out loud as well.
Yeah, and Kalevani here. I have a very less experience in JavaScript. We use like wherever we have a hidden elements, and sometimes we cannot perform a particular element with normal Selenium codes. So in that way, we used JavaScript.
Okay.
Mostly we used the Java executor method. That's it. I used.
Yeah. Okay.
Probably, yeah.
So that's your experience. Okay, great. Yeah, I've done that some too. So like, so you're used to using Java, right? And you'll have driver execute script. I don't know. Can you see my my text editor?
Yeah, I can see.
So you might have some JavaScript command, right? You know, kind of some fake code there, or what you'll probably do is it'll look something more like this, right? Document query selector.
Yes.
And you're trying to find an element, or set a timeout, or do something weird in JavaScript that you can't do normally with Selenium. So that's one way. This class is not going to focus on testing, though. This class is going to focus on web development, but from a test-driven perspective. And that's going to be a challenge because it's often hard to write a test for something that you don't know how to implement. But here's what we're going to try and do. In this class, we're going to learn about JavaScript, right? We're going to build a web app, and we're going to try to do it in a modern, good way. I know the old school way of building web apps. For instance, once upon a time, if you wanted to create a web app, you would use a programming language on the server side using CGI or servlets or some server-side methodology, PHP or Python or Perl or Ruby on Rails, whatever. And you would build a framework that would generate HTML on the server and send pages to the client, right? But back then you would just use JavaScript in a web page to do some things like maybe create a pop-up or adjust some styles, or with Ajax, you might fetch some data. But as time went by, JavaScript got better. People's understanding of what they could do with it got better. Different frameworks and tools got built, and more was done on the client side. Probably no single tool helped more for JavaScript than jQuery. jQuery started out as a way to standardize interaction with the HTML DOM, the document object model, across browsers, because each browser was very different. So the way the DOM, the way CSS styles, the way JavaScript engines worked were very different on Internet Explorer, on Firefox, Mozilla, Netscape, on Chrome even, and Safari when they started out. But JavaScript has gotten more standardized, and jQuery did a lot, along with many other tools, to standardize the interfaces, abstract the differences, and make sure that JavaScript worked well across platforms. And as they wrote JavaScript frameworks and apps upon that, they built more and more useful tools, things like underscore to help make JavaScript easier to use for more advanced features, backbone for interacting with events. And so nowadays, a lot of the web development is done on the client side. So you see here I have web applications. Old school server-side rendering JavaScript was just for UI manipulation mainly, maybe a few Ajax requests, meaning getting server requests. The newer modern way is to render on the client side and call web services. Let each user, each browser, do a lot of the work. And JavaScript was originally written not even for the browser. It was written for set-top devices, for like a cable box, as a scripting language for hardware. It was called Oak back then and developed by Sun Microsystems. You may know the history, but it's not too relevant. Anyway, so it was built as this little toy language, and they didn't build in too many complex concepts. It was really just access, you had arrays, you had numbers, you had strings, and everything was an array of arrays or hashes. And it turned out that the simplicity of JavaScript led to its power. And you see that in other utility languages, like Perl was very popular. You could bend it to do whatever you want, and have a single line of very obscure, understandable code that could do a lot of text manipulation, etc. By the way, I hear some talking in the background. Whoever can you mute, please, if that's happening? Anyway, so JavaScript grew up, and now we have these JavaScript frameworks, and let me see. Oh, here we go. Yeah. So we've got all these JavaScript frameworks that allow you to do lots of stuff on the server side. The big three are probably Angular, React, and Vue. React is the most popular one nowadays. Angular it's Angular 1 to Angular 2 has changed a lot. And Angular was really the big client-side framework back around 8 or 9 years ago, I think, developed by Google, and it became very popular. React kind of learned from Angular. It was kind of complex, and React went for simplicity, and it was developed by Facebook internally, and started becoming popular about 5 years ago. Ember was also another framework inspired by Ruby on Rails, and actually developed by Ruby developers independently. It's very popular at LinkedIn, for instance. They use Ember.js. But it's a framework that uses conventions the same way Rails uses conventions to make it easy. I do have a little bit of experience with Ember, and we're not going to go into that. But then there's Vue. Vue is gaining in popularity. It's probably the third most popular. It may have overtaken Angular as the second most popular. Just checking the chat to see if anyone had some comments. Let me see. Oh, sorry, Mona, if you're not here, I don't have time to send invites. All right, so I'll go back to here. Anyway, so what I wanted to do was check out Vue.js. React is really popular, but Vue is up and coming. So we may mess around with different ones. But there's the other side of developing a JavaScript web application, and that's the server side. The client does an extreme amount of logic nowadays because web apps are much more interactive than they used to be. You used to just click through pages and fill out forms. But these frameworks allow you to add that complexity and build true complex applications on the client side. The other side is Node.js. Node is the server-side framework that's most popular for developing JavaScript on the server side. And so there's two things, there's two different JavaScript engines, right? There's the server, Node.js, which is optional. You could build a JavaScript application with a Ruby or a Java or Python or PHP or C#, any language, a backend, and they do. But then there's the client side and the JavaScript engine within browsers. Today, I'm going to demonstrate a little bit both of how to set up the server side and how to use JavaScript on the client side to kind of interact. Now, Node.js and the Chrome JavaScript rendering engine are both based on the V8 engine developed by Google, also an open source project. Now, JavaScript has gone through several versions. The old way of doing JavaScript, also known as ECMAScript, so ES3 was the standard for a long time, 10 or 15 years. And then ES5 was kind of the transition period where you started to see things like promises and stuff. Now with ES6 and 6+, it's kind of settled down. You have things like async and await, and it's standardizing across. You used to have to use shims and polyfills to be able to implement the newer JavaScript specs. But now we have the Babel transpiler, which can turn everything. It eventually ends up looking like the old ES3, the old JavaScript, when it gets compiled down to run on your browser, although browsers are catching up with new features. Now there's other languages that are based on JavaScript that compile to JavaScript and treat JavaScript as its runtime. Coffeescript was a popular one that's really kind of faded. TypeScript is popular because it allows you to specify types. JavaScript is very loosely typed. Strings and numbers can be fluidly translated. TypeScript allows you to be very explicit on the type, which for primitive types like strings and integers, it's not that big of a deal because you can usually tell the difference. But for object, it allows for safe typing in like strongly typed languages like Java. Flow, really kind of an alternative to TypeScript. This was developed by Facebook. And then ClojureScript is for working with Clojure for functional programming. Another thing to point out is, let's go ahead and jump into this. Things like bundling and adding libraries requiring, those are better illustrated than talked about. And then site generators, I've got some lists of what to do. So let's start out with creating some server-side JavaScript. And then we will create some client-side. So first thing I want to do, can you see my browser? I'm going to go to nodejs.org. And you can download Node.js directly for your operating system. The latest version, 12.16 or 13.12 for the latest version versus the stable version. Now you can download this and install this for Windows or Mac, or compile it yourself for Linux, or use your Ubuntu or Red Hat or Debian binaries. Another thing you can do, and this is what I recommend, is to use NVM, the Node Version Manager. Now this allows you to install different versions of Node.js. It's a simple shell script. It used to have a nice, clean page. So okay, so yeah, on a Mac or Linux, you can run NVM. I think there's a Windows version of this, but on Windows, NVM doesn't work because it uses bash, which is the bourne-again shell, the command line from Unix systems. So you could just paste this, not that. You could paste this with curl or wget, and you can install NVM. I already have NVM installed, so We'll just ignore it. And now you can use NVM to install different versions of Node.js. So I can do NVM list. Here, let me make this a little bit bigger so everyone can see it. Is this font size okay for you guys to read?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, great. So you can see, you can list the different versions of Node.js. I have the default stable version 13.3. I could do NVM install 12. What did it say on the website? 12.16.1. And you can do that. So go ahead and take some time now. Either install NVM and use that, or just download the binaries from nodejs.org if you don't have it. Now, if you have trouble running the server-side JavaScript, that's okay. Because most of the work we're going to do today is going to be within the browser, using the browser's JavaScript engine to kind of give us a taste for manipulating the HTML DOM and understand some of the underlying features of frameworks like Vue and React and how they work. So you see I have Node version 12.16.1, which I just installed. I'm going to go ahead and switch back. Now I can open up a new window, a new terminal window, and it'll use my default. But if I want to switch back, I can do NVM use, and I can call it stable, or I can say I can be explicit in 13.3.0. And now when I do node-v for version, it shows I have that version. Okay. How's everyone doing? Are you all able to get Node installed? Let me check the chat.
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Oh, great. Anyone have trouble not getting Node installed yet? Here we go. All right, I'm gonna take silence as you've got it. All right, so now that we've got Node installed, now Node is not just for running server-side JavaScript. Node is also the tool used for building and manipulating and testing JavaScript, even if you're doing only client-side development. So even if you're only going to be developing front-end JavaScript using Angular or React, you're still going to want Node.js installed. In order to use Node.js, you can use the interactive shell or REPL for read, execute, parse, run. I think that's what REPL stands for, R-E-P-L. You just type node on your command line. Oop. And it should start. And the first thing you want to do is let's do hello world. So JavaScript doesn't have a print statement because it's not. I've got way too much history going on here. Because it's not meant to be interacted with that way. It's meant to be in the browser or with Node on the server. So you do console.log, and of course I can do hello JavaScript, and it'll print out hello JavaScript, and it's this gray area undefined. It's returning undefined, right? So I can also do an expression 1 + 1, do some integer math. This is one of my favorite tools for Node or Ruby or some of these REPLs, these interactive shells. I always bring up Node in a terminal, and when I calculate my taxes, right, I'll do like federal income equals $1 million and 1 cent, and then I'll do like Fed tax rate equals 0.49. I'm making this up, and then I'll do tax equals. Hello, I hear someone talking, but I can't understand. Was that Arvind? Was that in the background, or was that you trying to talk? Is everything good?
Sorry, man. It was just an issue with the mic.
Okay, great. All right, thanks. So I use this all the time. It's kind of like my console spreadsheet. I'll do simple math on that, or I'll do a building project at Home Depot, and I'll be like lumber equals 439 or something like that, and I'm gonna need 10 2x4s, and so I'm like, okay, 48 or 43, whatever. So this just goes to show you can do math, you can save variables with JavaScript. So I should probably back up and point out that console.log, that's a function. Think of that as print statement for JavaScript. 1 + 1, that's an expression. True is an expression, so is false. So is true equal means is equal to false. Now that returns false. So 1 = 2 returns false. 1 = 1 is true. Now 1 is equal to 1.0, that's also true. If you want to see a humorous video, look up Wattman. I don't know if you'll find that. Anyway, JavaScript has some really strange and unexpected behaviors when you do things like comparing numbers to strings. True. But it doesn't equal 1.0. Oh, it does. So it's casting. All right. Anyway, but there's some really strange gotchas with JavaScript, which is kind of what gave it a bad reputation back in the old days. I'm not going to go over that now. But anyway, so these are expressions. You're either doing arithmetic, you're making a declarative statement, or you're doing a comparison, something that will return a single value or resolve to a single value, not necessarily return. You also have variables, right? A variable name. My name is Aaron. Oops. Now, when I put the quotation marks around it, that makes it a string. Does everyone understand what I mean when I say a string? If you don't, we can take a minute and talk about different primitive types of objects. Give me a thumbs down if you don't know what I mean when I say a string. All right, good. Everyone's got that. So I create a name, and then I can do something like console.log, and just to make it even better, hello, comma, and I'll do plus name. And it should say hello, Aaron, just like that. Now, newer versions of JavaScript allow you to do string interpersonalization, which uses the backtick, which on the American keyboard is in the top left corner above your tab key by the tilde or by the number 1. So I do the backtick, and then I can do this $, curly brace, and then the other backtick. So I'm taking this string. This is like a string formatter. And when I do that, it does the same thing, except it's got an extra space there. All right, so I'm calling that function. I'm creating a variable. Now, var is the old way of doing a variable in JavaScript. You might know that we have also let. If I wanted to change this, it's going to say name has already been defined. So I can say let age equal 42. And then I can see my age. I can also do a constant. What's that?
What is the difference between var and let?
var is older, and the main difference is that when you create a function or when you're in a certain scope, that variable declarations are hoisted to the top. So if you have a function, and I don't want to really go into this too much, but I'll go ahead and do it. I'll create a function, and all right, so I created this function. It calls console.log.bar, or console log, and it's going to print out the value of the variable bar, which is watt, right? So now if I call foo, well, that didn't work. if I do var bar equals wow, console.log bar, and then I call foo, then it prints what. Now, with let, maybe I can do this outside of a function to demonstrate. All right. Now, if I, that's not what I wanted to do. Yeah, I'm going to need a function to demonstrate this. Actually, I'm just going to leave that. The difference is that bar is hoisted to the top. It's not inside this function, and I don't have an answer for that. But when you use var, it behaves differently than let. Now, in general practice, they're interchangeable, but there's some subtle differences about how the variables are hoisted. I think maybe functions are hoisted too. Anyway, now constant, this is what I wanted to get to. A constant, not really a constant because, well, a constant is something that can't be changed. So, I can, I'll just call it A, right? Constant A is 1. Now if I print A, I'll get 1. A plus 2 will equal 3. Now if I want to change A, it says assign to constant variable. That doesn't work. Now if I do let B equal 2, I can do B, and then I can do B equals 3, and B is now 3. So let or var will change that. Use let in modern usage instead of var because it will be more predictive and not have that hoisting of variables that can be used before they're assigned, or can be set before they're assigned, I should say. But with a constant, so I want to create a list, right? And I can create an array. This is the next thing I wanted to show is so I'm creating this list, and I'm mixing up strings and integers because JavaScript will allow me to do this. And I create this list, right? And I can see the elements of the list. I can see an item. So the first item is indexed with 0 instead of 1. So the first item is 0 always in JavaScript and in many other languages, that it's a 0 index. So the first item is 0, the second item is 1, and the third item is 2, and so on. Now, if I try to modify a constant list, it'll let me do that, and I could be wrong. And I see it will. Whereas remember, if I try to assign A, which is a constant basic variable, it's not going to let me do that. So that's a gotcha with constants. Okay, so that's as far as I want to go in the basics of server-side. We've touched on basic types, numeric types, like 1 or 2.0 or whatever, right? Or -77. Those are all numeric. We've touched on string types. A string can be a single character. It can use double quotes or single quotes, or it can be a word or whatever. It can actually be multiple lines and have new lines and so forth. Oops. So there's strings. So we have numbers, we have strings, and we have objects, and we have arrays. Now, I haven't talked about objects yet, but I'll do that first. This is the last thing I want to show. So an object is like a hash. It has a key and a value. So I might have a key of A and a value of 1, and a key of B and a value of 2. Some languages call this a dictionary, or a hash, or a hash map in Java, or I'm trying to think of what other languages call them. It's probably not even called a hash in JavaScript, and I'm getting it wrong. So now I have an object, right? And now I can refer to object dot one. Oh, oops, I mean object dot A is 1, and object dot B is 2. That's kind of the simplest way. That's called an object literal. Now, I can see type of A is number, type of name is string, age is a number too. Type of list should be an array, but it's an object. And then what was the other one I just, oh, object is an object. But if I do list, I'll have to look it up. Because an array is a type of object, it's not a literal. Yeah, that's what I thought. Is it dot is array, or is it just a, yeah. So if I do list is array, and is array is a method or a function on this. I guess I need to do, I need to call array static method, speaking in Java ease. Is list an array? True. Is object an array? False. That's the difference there. Although, I also wanted to point out, I can do list sub 1, right? Gives me B. What does list look like? Okay. And then I have object 2. Notice a list or an array has square brackets. An object has angle brackets. Now I can do object sub A as well. Oops, I need to refer to that as a string. So object sub A, or I can do object dot A. So does that make sense? Are you seeing lists and objects both contain multiple items? A list is only a sequence though. The first element, 0, the second element, 1, the third element, 2, and so forth. For an object, the first item not only has a sequence number, but it has a, it doesn't have a sequence number. It has a key or a name associated with it. Now I could loop through the elements in an object. But anyway, that's all I wanted to cover. So we have numbers, strings, we have arrays, and we have objects. And arrays are a special type of an object. A class is also an object. A function is an object. Do I have foo? Okay, so type of foo is a function. A function is a type of an object that might have variables assigned to it, properties, or other functions underneath it. A class, actually underneath the covers, is really a function that creates an object. But I don't want to blow your mind or confuse myself. So we'll jump into that. Next thing I want to do is talk about client side. Now this is Node.js, and the great thing about Node.js is you can install, oops. I just wanted to terminate that. So I hit Command C or Control C to exit out of Node.js. Node comes with a cool tool. I'm trying to think of something. I'll just show. So there's Webdriver Io. I can install Webdriver Io. And for you, here, I'll install it globally. So I do npm install -g Webdriver Io. This isn't going to be an easy example, excuse me. What this will do, though, is it will download the package called Webdriver Io and install it in my system, and then I can use it in my internal scripts or in other functions. So npm, the Node package manager, is the way to download and install dependencies. And I'm actually going to kill this. We'll explore that more later, because what I wanted to do was get into some web development. And in order to do that, I could work on Node. Actually, let's do that. Let's start building our web app. So let's make a directory. Let's make our hello web app. And we're going to create this simple. and I'm going to change directory CD to my hello web app folder. And now what I want to do is I want to make this a node project. So I'm going to do npm init. All right, so it wants me to give it a name. I'm just going to accept all these defaults. Doesn't matter. We'll look at all those later. And it says okay. So now what it did is it created this file called package.json. Let's look at this file. It has all these questions we asked. And I'm going to ignore that. And now what I want to do is I want to npm install, and I want to do -s for save, for development. And what I want to do is I want to install live server. I've already got it installed, I think somewhere. Okay, it is with a dash. But do npm install save live server with a dash, not an equals. And the reason I want you to do this is going to give you a development environment to work with by starting a web server. Now you could also install this globally with the word global or -g. Since I already have that installed, and you probably don't want to see that just load, once you have it installed, if you do it with -g for global, now I can just do live server, and let's see what port is it going to start on. Oh, great. So it started here. It opens my project. So now I have it opened in my browser, if you see that. 127.0.0.1, that's my local host, my machine. Port 8080. And it has, I can look at the package.json file. I can look at my node modules folder. And in my node modules, there's nothing because I didn't install anything. So I have this live server running. I'm going to leave this open and go to another terminal. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open my text editor. Oops, let's go to what I call it. Oh man, am I even on the wrong computer? No. Hello web app. All right, thought I might have been SSH'd into a different machine. Okay, so I'm just going to open Visual Studio Code on the current directory so that I can look at this. And I am going to close that welcome. I'm going to create a new file. And yeah. I'm not a, I'd probably use Vim, but I want to show you Visual Studio. Okay, so now I've got my index.html file. And the index will be automatically read. I just want to create some HTML. Thumbs up or down if in the chat if you are familiar with HTML, comfortable or a master. Let me know. Anyone? Am I only seeing? Okay, yeah, I guess I was only seeing the private chat. Okay, so we've got some basic. Peggy looks like she's pretty comfortable. Mike and Kalavani, you guys are pretty good. So we've got some basic. Okay, so I've got my basic HTML here. Is this going to tax anyone? I've got the HTML open tag and the HTML close tag using these angle brackets, the greater than less than sign. And I have my body, and I have this hello web app, and I'm going to save this file. All right, so the pretty simple web app, right? Not really a web app, just simple. And so I have this live server running, and what it did, it didn't live, but now it did reload. And so you can see I have my web app. Oops. All right, I'm going to go back over to my terminal. I'm going to kill this. So just so you saw, if you have installed live server, has everyone got the live server installed and running on their machine? All right, Peggy said yes. All right, now the next thing I can do, and I'm going to move this out of the way so you can see that, and then I'm going to go to my editor. Use whatever editor you like. Feel free to have an argument about VI versus Emacs versus whatever. I'm going to change my code, my HTML. I'm going to change it to say hello web app to hello class. And I'll just hit save on that. And you see it changed automatically as soon as I saved my file. I can do the same thing from the command line. Here, right, I can even open it in Vim. And I can do things like I can go over here and add an exclamation point, and it automatically appears. So that's pretty cool. We can edit our HTML and see it on a live web server running on our development box. That's pretty handy. So I can create my web app, but I'm going to do something a little trickier. Now I'm going to I've decided that what I want to walk you guys through is I desperately need to get a web page, and so you guys can all register for classes and get notifications without me having to send you personal messages on LinkedIn. This has been taking all my time for the past several days. So on oneshore.com, I finally got up this morning early, and I built this really simple web page. It's not really a web app, it's just a page. But it says OneShore free training courses. It says no, registration doesn't work yet. So if you push the register button, it doesn't do anything. But it has the classes. Test automation with Java are on Mondays. Mobile testing with Appium. Oops, that doesn't even exist yet. That shouldn't be there. Building and testing a web application with JavaScript. That's what we're doing today. So I've got this list here. And what we're going to do, we're going to get through the basics of writing this by hand in the browser. We're going to turn this hello class into this, sort of. It's probably not going to have the images or the formatting. Not that this is impressive formatting. But now, if you have any trouble with Node.js, with installing live server or whatever, forget about that, because I want you to open up a new website. Have you guys ever been to this website? It's called About Blank. It's awesome. It's actually nothing. It's not a web page. It's something the browser does that says, give me HTML. Now let me introduce you to something else for those of you who don't know. I can go to my Chrome preferences and wait, I don't want to go to preferences. What do I want? I want to go to my settings. So in these little 3 dots here, right? It might be, if you have a different browser, it might be a gear or something. I'm using Chrome, Safari, Edge. They all have these developer tools, which are slightly different for each. I recommend for consistency, if you have it, to just use Chrome, but you can probably follow along. All right, so I'm here on oneshore.com, free training courses. What I want to do is I want to change this title to something else. So here's how I do it. I have the console here. So you click on the console. You can see the elements, the HTML, the actual HTML code of this website. You can see the console. You can see the sources for the different files. So I can go to the images and so forth and see this Java SVG. I can see the network requests that it took to load this file. We can do the Lighthouse. We can record those metrics. We can see the memory used, all these other things. And in this case, you can see I've got the Ember application. There's no Ember application. There's the Ember dev tools, and React and Vue have similar things. But anyway, 2 things we're interested in today are the elements, which shows the HTML, and the console. Someone mentioned at the beginning of class that when you're writing Selenium code, you might have something that says document find, or not document, get element by ID. So we want to get the logo just because it's visible, right? So I want to get element by ID logo. And you can see it returns this HTML of the image. It's not actually this object. What I want to do next is I want to create a variable. So I can use var or let. I could even do const, but I actually, I'm just going to use var because, so I'm going to call it logo, and I'm going to do var logo equals document get element by ID. Now, what this console is, this is similar to my Node.js terminal, right, that I was just working in. But this is in the browser, and all modern browsers have this console. Even if you don't have the developer tools open to see it, you can interact and write to the console log from your JavaScript. But anyway, what I've done here, and this might look familiar to those of you who use Selenium, it's like doing find element, right? In Selenium. Thumbs up if you've used Selenium and you're familiar with doing find element. Buyang Mike, yes. Kalivani, yes. Okay, so it looks like you guys are all testers here, huh? Awesome. Me too. So I've got the logo, right? And now logo is this image object, and I can do things like I can get properties or functions on it, right? So I can get the I can get the title. I can get the source. Here's the URL for that image. I can get the ID. I can even get attributes, right? So I can get an attribute. I can get the ID attribute, which of course is going to be logo, or the source. So you can see I'm referencing it in different ways. I'm using this function get attribute to get these same properties: the source, the ID, and the title. But let's start over. Let's create a web page. Now I can do it the same thing on my hello class by opening my console. By the way, it's Option Command I to do that on a Mac. So let's see, View Developer Tools. So that's the other way to get to this part here. So on Chrome, View Developer Tools. You can also go to Inspect Elements or JavaScript Console directly. It's going to bring up the same thing. And you see it has this live reload enabled. So I can do, I can also do Document Query Selector. And I can choose, I want to find my H1. And you see it highlights it there. And it shows that. I can do the same thing on About Blank, which is not even a page. Now, I have this About Blank. And again, I'm going to open this up to the console. Now what I want to do is I want to add an element. I want to document append child. Oh, wait. First, I want to create an element. I want to create an H1 element. And I want to assign it to a variable. We'll call it heading. And now I have heading. It's an H1. It has nothing to it. Now what I want to do is I want to set the inner text to welcome class. And semicolons are optional in JavaScript, but that can also be, oops, I did it wrong. It's not a function. This is just a property. So I set that to equal welcome text or welcome class. And now the next thing I need to do is I have this element, but it's not attached to anything in the DOM, right? I have a head and I have a body and I have nothing else there. So what I want to do is I want to attach it to the body. So I want to get the body, document, and there's also this shorthand. I can do $. That's equivalent to doing a query string or document query string. So now I want to do body append element or append child. And what do I want to append? I want to append my heading. Is everyone following along with this okay? Boom, welcome class. That just showed up on my web page. Thumbs up or down if you're able to do this yourselves. Okay, good, Peggy. On Windows F12 for getting the dev tools. Thanks, Mike. Okay, Mike's got that too. NS Proj, that's Dipali, right? All right, and I want to see everyone. Okay, great, guys. Oh, Shiva, thanks for clarifying that. So now we can do that. Let's go back to the other page, to the hello class. What we want to do is we want to change this one, right? So we've got this query selector. I want to save this to a variable. We'll call this heading. And you can do this on your about blank or on your any other page. You can do this to Google or Amazon, any page you want. So we've got this heading, right? It's my H1. It says hello class. What I want to do is I want to change the style. Let's change the color to blue. I think this will work. Yep. So now I've changed the color of hello class to blue, and I can change it to red. Or green. Or I can change it to a hex value, right? So I can go make it red. So it's RGB values. So I can do FF. So it goes through from 0. That'll be black. I can also use 3 to just specify 3 colors. So I have 0 red, 0 green, and 0 blue. So what I want to do is I want to add 9 blue. That makes it a medium blue. I can change it to 3, and it's a dark blue. Now I can also change it to A through F. I can't do G, but F. That makes it the brightest blue possible. If I want all blue and all green, I can do FF. It makes it cyan. Now if I do all 3 colors, it disappears. It didn't actually disappear though, it's just white. You can see I highlighted that. So I can mix my colors, right? If I do, let's do red and blue together. What should that do? That should make us purple, right? Or magenta, which isn't a real color, theoretically. Anyway, so you can set different styles, right? I can set text decoration, underline. And you see that also overwrit the color. So you can add multiple styles. I want it to be blue and underline. There we go. So this is just some simple JavaScript manipulation of the HTML styling. Everyone follow along with this so far? Here, I'll just close this out. All right, great. I'll forget about closing that out. So we can go here. We've got our HTML here. Now, the third way you can interact with JavaScript is with a script tag. And this will be the last thing we'll cover for today. So we're covering really the very basics of how to manipulate JavaScript. We've got Node.js on the server side, or for the development side, where it has a console, but you can also write programs in Node.js. That's maybe something I should have covered as well. Not just interactively, but you can save files and execute them with Node. You can interact with the JavaScript console within the browser itself. It's like having a live programming environment, as you've seen. Now, the third way is to use a script tag in your HTML document. And what I want to do is I want to do something like document right line. This is kind of like console. And I'll write a greeting here. Now, when I reload my page, it actually does that here. So the next thing I want to do is I want to add an event. So there's a couple ways you can do this. I can do on click. So on click normally happens for a button. Let's add a button just to make it consistent, but it'll work on other elements as well. And sometimes that confuses Selenium. And I want it to execute a function, right? I want to execute greeting function, which doesn't exist yet, and it needs to be in quotes. Single, okay. And then my button value is going to be click me. And there you see my little button appeared. Awesome. So let's go ahead and remove that document right line. So now I have hello class and a button that appears. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to create that function greeting. Now if you look here in the let's clear this console. I click, oops, I need to clear this, make sure, okay. Now if I click on click me, in the console it says uncaught reference error, greeting is not defined at HTML button on click index line 4. That's right here. So what I want to do is I want to create a function called greeting, just like that. And we'll start by console log, welcome to class. All right. So now we're both interacting with the console, or we're seeing the console logs, and we're writing JavaScript code in our HTML page. And this is all stuff that's rendered on the server. It's a static page, so it's not actually rendered. It's just sending this file, but it sends it, with live reload. So I don't actually have to click reload. That's just a habit I do. But now when I click, let me clear my console log. When I click me, it says welcome to class here in the console. There's another way I can do that because the normal user isn't going to be looking at the console log. And this is the way back in the early 2000s or the 1990s even. If you wanted to debug your JavaScript, this is what you had to do. Alert, welcome to class. And this will create a pop-up alert when I click on it now. So I'm going to click on click me. It says, welcome to class. This is probably, if you've taken a beginning JavaScript class, this is probably the first thing you did is you created an alert like that. And it doesn't have to be a function. I could take this alert here and I can put that directly into the on click there. Let's see if okay, it works, okay. All right, so that's the basics of what we're doing. Now, if we combine this with our, with our code in here, right? So if you have, what I want to do is I want to create another heading. I'll create like an H2. So my greeting is going to create an H2 element. And I'll use my semicolons here to be a good citizen. I'll even switch to using let. And then what I want to do is, so I create the element and I want to set the inner text instead of, oops. Then I want to do heading inner text equals welcome to class. And then I want to get my body. Now this $ works in the browser. It doesn't work in here, I believe. So I'm going to do document, or I should say the $ works in the console, but it doesn't work in the main JavaScript interpretation. So I'll do query query selector. So I'm getting the body. I'm creating a heading, I'm getting the body, and then I'm appending the heading to the body, just like we did before. And I I'm used to sliding screens, but I've got the wrong thing up. All right, so I'm appending the heading to the body. Does this all look cool? Let's add my semicolons here. So now we should have welcome to class appear below this welcome class. Or, oh, you know what? Oh, that's because that's on the about blank page. Hello class, so let's close that. Hello class, then when I click on click me, it should run this greeting function, which will create the heading element and append it to the body. So cross your fingers, see if it works. Hey, it worked. It appended that in there, and I can then view my developer tools, and you can see the elements that exist. It has this welcome to class, which got appended as the last element in the body. All right, so that's it for today. What's the difference between CSS and HTML styling? So CSS is one way to apply a style. We don't have time to go into that today. We might next week. But what I want to do next week is I have a pretty ambitious goal. Next Tuesday, what I want us to do is I want us to create a project in GitHub and deploy it to a production server. I think we're going to use netlify.com, but you can also use GitHub pages. The idea being that we're going to write HTML, and you guys are each going to create a website with a public URL. It'll be yourapp.netlify.app or something like that. And I don't know if it's pronounced netlify. But that's what we're going to do. We're going to create a web app, and it'll be a little bit more complex than our simple hello class. What we want to do is we want to ask you your name, or ask the visitor their name, and then say hello name. Or if they don't provide their name, say hello world. And we're going to create a project in GitHub. We're going to use Git. Who here has used Git? Everyone, give me a thumbs down. What's Git? Or I've heard of it and I don't like it. Okay, yes, yes. Good, so that's not gonna be a problem, but we're gonna create a project on GitHub, and we're going to, so if you haven't, if you don't have a GitHub account, go to GitHub, sign up, create a user, and then you can actually log into Netlify with your GitHub user. And I need to look that up. It may be called Netlify, which I think is a horrible name. But Netlify, whatever. So everyone take care. It's been a great class. It's a lot easier with a small class instead of 100 people like yesterday to communicate. So I've really enjoyed this, and I hope you have too. We can take a couple minutes if those of you who are still here who have time. Can you give me a little bit of feedback? Was this pace good? Did I do too much? Was it too simple? What do you think? And what I'll do is let's just go. I'll get the participant list, and I'll call you each out by name. So Peggy, you're our self-declared JavaScript expert. What did you think?
Oops. Wait, can you hear me now?
I hear you.
Oh, great. Okay. I thought it was great. Anytime I do anything, I always like, I like to start from the very beginning. So I like how you did that. And I thought it was really well paced, and it gave people an opportunity. You know, I always, whenever I'm learning something new, so I have been learning JavaScript for a while, but because we're applying it in the scope of automation, I like doing things from the beginning. And that's just kind of my style of learning. So I thought it was great.
Awesome. Thanks for that feedback. You gave similar feedback yesterday, right?
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I like to do that too, to start from, I'm an idiot and I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want to belabor the points like installation or go into too much details about this is what an array is versus an object. But I want to bring those things up because those are going to be the gotchas. And if you get them into your head early, even if you don't remember the details, and as you saw, I got stumped when someone said, what's the difference between let and var? That it helps you to start thinking about those things even if you can get pretty far without knowing that stuff, right? You could just by rote copy some HTML, copy some JavaScript, make some guesses about what to change. And with this command completion, you can learn a lot and guess a lot.
Yeah.
And with Stack Overflow, you can get pretty far. But I want to bring up some of those fundamentals,
Yeah.
and do things like how do you get started with Node, and see how Node looks working on the server side looks very similar to working in the browser console. And I think that takes away the fear from people of the magic.
Yeah,
All right.
I think it's a great balance.
Okay,
And
thanks.
I think that, people run, I know when I'm taking a class, if there are things like, oh, I want to know more about Node. I mean, I use it all the time in class, in my boot camp, but if that was something I wanted to know more about, I would just take notes of the things that I wanted to kind of expand on. So I think you struck the perfect balance. It was great.
Good. And I think when we get a forum up here in the next couple of weeks, I hope that we can branch out and help each other on that. Like the var let question. We could create a post in the forum, and even if all it is someone in class Googles it or looks on Stack Overflow and posts a response that we can do. I think that'll be a great way that we can take those tangents and from my gaps in my knowledge, or just by distributing the load of learning around to each other, we can through a forum or maybe a mailing list. I don't want to have too much email because we probably already have more than we need already, or more than we can handle already. So on to the next. How about just going alphabetically? Altamash, do you have any comments?
Yeah, I think it was a very good class. In fact, I joined 10 minutes late, but I was able to understand almost everything because the pace was perfect for me, and I believe for everyone else. So,
that's good. You
yeah.
missed the boring introduction stuff.
Yeah, okay. Okay,
right.
so I'm looking forward to the next class. Okay, Aaron.
Okay, great. And we should probably introduce testing early on because we all believe in test-driven development, right?
Sure, yeah.
All right. Arvind, do you have comments? I don't hear anything. We'll give you a second. Arvind? Raman? All right, we'll go on to the next. Okay, he's typing. Well, it was good. Thank you. All right, Dipali, do you have any comments?
Well, yeah, I've learned so many new things, and I think you are a great instructor. So even if you're saying that, yeah, you're learning these things, but I believe that you have got the mastery in it.
All
So
right, thank you.
I've come across so many people who are saying that, yeah, they are a developer, but they don't know so many things. Means they never use console and all those things. So they simply try in editor and just try to see in browser whether means whatever the changes they have made, it got reflected, and they don't know how to debug. But yeah, here by looking at your class, I feel confident, and
right.
I'm really
Cool.
looking forward to it.
All right. And Arvin just typed some additional comments in the chat. So he said, looking forward to test-driven aspect and expecting more of a Selenium and testing perspective. There's so many things I would like to go over. And in the Java class, it was the same thing. There's a lot of other topics that people would like to cover. API testing, Appium, so forth. I'm just doing what I can, and because I do testing all the time and Java has the largest demand for testing, I think JavaScript is becoming a close second for testing. That I want to branch out. I want to do more development as well myself, and so I've just chosen arbitrarily to focus more on the development aspect of JavaScript. But as a tester, I want to do test-driven, so we'll get to that. And Peggy left a comment that said, do we really need Selenium with JavaScript? No, there's other ways you can test. And we're going to try to test individual components. After we get a website up and running, because what I want to do is go straight to production, right? We want to do continuous delivery. So on day 2, if we can get something up in production, that'll be great. And then day 3, I want to introduce Vue, or I might just go crazy and say, you know what, let's go with React because more people like that. Or go back to Ember, which is something I know a little bit about. But anyway, to actually develop a front-end framework code on week 3. So that's the plan here. Kalivani, do you have comments?
Today's session, it was good, Aaron. I don't have any specific comments since it's
Well,
an overview session, so it's fine.
All right. Next, Mohammed, do you have any comments?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for
Hi.
session. I don't have experience in JavaScript, but it was very clear and very good lesson. But I have a question about the console when you're using the developer tools. When you're changing something there, like a color, like the size of fonts or something else, is it applied to your code or it is just for the session?
It's just for the session. Good question. That's right. That it only changes the browser. It's not going to change any saved code. It only changes what's being rendered in the DOM currently on that single browser. So yeah, it does look like, whoa, you're changing google.com. That's kind of cool, but you're not really. You're just changing the DOM, the document object model, and the associated HTML and CSS styles running on your browser. And with live reload, I had this happening before running a live server, that it actually, all my changes kept getting erased by the live reload, and it was a pain. Anyway, thanks for your comments.
Thank you. Looking forward to the next.
All right. So I'm looking for the NS project. I remembered you said who your name was on there, but
yeah, this is Shiva. Yeah,
oh,
thank
Shiva.
you very much for the session. Yeah, although I joined late, I picked it up and it was very good.
All right, thank you.
Are you going to place this recording somewhere? Because I missed.
Yes, I will. That's the other challenge. I need to figure out a good way for me to upload recordings because my bandwidth is limited and it takes forever. But I also owe the Java class from yesterday an upload of the recording. Great. Let's see next. Subu. Sorry for butchering your name. Feel free to correct me.
Yeah, it's Subbu. It was a perfect introductory session. All the basic things required to kickstart the web development actually, and any automation course. So I'm looking forward to another classes as well. Thank you so much.
All right. Did I miss anyone who would like to make a comment? No? Okay. Well, thank you all. It's been great. We'll see you next week on this class, or tomorrow. We're going to do Python with testing web services. So we're going to use the requests library with Python to access web services. If you'd like to join tomorrow, send me a message. If not, we'll see you next week or for some of the other classes. All right, take care.
Where do I send? Sorry, I have one question. If I want to join tomorrow's session, where do I send the message? Is it?
Okay, so I'm going to paste on chat. My email is aaron.e@oneshore.com. My goal for today is to have the oneshore.com training URL that when you go to this, let me see. When you go to the training page, you can actually click register. Just enter your email address, and then it'll send you the invite there. I think that'll help me out if I can just send people to that URL instead of replying to everyone on LinkedIn. But yeah, just send me an email or stay tuned. Keep refreshing oneshore.com for the next 8 hours, and eventually the register button will work.
Thank you.
Okay, Aaron, just one question for the next week on the same session.
Yes.
We're going to use the same link, or you'll be rolling out different links every time.
I will send for next week a new meeting invite link, and that will be the permanent link. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, that sounds good.
All right. Thank you. And what I'll do is I'll just take the attendees for this class in the email, and I'll just or in the calendar invite, and I'll just email everyone in this class list with the new Zoom link and meeting invite. Okay. And that'll be a recurring meeting.
Yeah, sure.
And of course, if you want off the list, just let me know. Either delete it or hopefully I'll have a mechanism where you can, do it yourself online. But I don't want you to keep getting meeting invites if you've decided not to attend a certain meeting after time. But bear with me. I'm doing this all from scratch and still trying to make a living as well. So take care. We'll talk to you later. Have a good day or night.
Thanks, Aaron. Goodbye.
Yeah, 9 o'clock Pacific time, Tom, for the Python class.
Okay, thank you.
All the classes are the same time. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.